Hi, friends. I'm seated as usual in my computer on a coffee table here in the living room, a room I've seen a lot of lately. I'm preparing the lesson to send you for this weekend, and I've decided to do something a little bit different. I got thinking about the fact that I have sometimes taught how to create a template into which you can insert different photos. The idea for this originally came from the ride for Roswell when we were having prints for people and we wanted to have a template in which we could slide a photo, and then the next time you'd take that photo out, you'd put a new photo in, and you had a celebratory template to use. And it can be used over and over again, and it's all done in layers. So there are probably a number of things you can learn from this. But I went out searching and I found some graphics. You know, the one we all have been seeing on television. I don't know whether it's a molecule or a virus or what, but I found it. And I'll show you how we can turn it into a layered template to go with this. So let me start out by showing you the finished product. And you get a little idea from that. So if you have your editor open, you go File Open. And in the things for this class today, I have Fashion PSD. So this is the final one. And as you can see, Sherry and I had a picture taken wearing masks. This was on the occasion of a celebration for Bob Kaderbeck's 80th birthday. And we were having a caravan of cars to go honking by his house. And we met at Sherry's to line up before we went. And somebody came along, I think it was a neighbor of the Kaderbecks, and took pictures of all of us. So guess what? We have a picture of us with our masks on. Had a pinwheel that we were giving as a gift to put in their front lawn. And so it's the first of the things I have that I think of as strictly a memory of COVID-19. So this is the final one. And if you look over at the layers panel, you'll see that on the bottom floating along is a transparent layer. Above it is the picture, which is underneath the border. Can you see the border layer that has the white border? And above the border layer is the little COVID logo, so it floats on top. And then I added text, and the text has to be above this white border if it's going to be visible. So everything has its order, and if I were using this multiple times, I would save it as a PSD file. And then when I wanted to change it, all I'd have to do is delete the layer with our picture and drag a new picture in. And we could keep using it. So if you had a family reunion, you could have the information about the date of the reunion and the name of the family. And then all you would do is put different pictures in it to create that. So let's close this for now. The first chore I'm going to show you is how I cut that COVID virus out of its document I got from. So if you come back to the File Open command, you will find the COVID-19 JPEG. If you will open that, this is what I downloaded off a website. I went in and searched for COVID-19 images, and everything was very small, so I'll show you what I had to do with it. But this is the one that was the biggest I could get, and you can see how small it is. It's at 100% right now. So I'm just going to stretch this out a bit. I'm going to crop away the edges so I've got a square in the middle. So I'm taking my crop tool without any restrictions, and it gives me one. I can just go in and drag the sides in until I get a space around it about equal, and I'll accept the crop. And now I at least have the little logo. The first thing I'm going to do is make it bigger because it's too small at this point. If you want to see its size, I'll show you the image size. It's only 174 pixels by 170. And so I'm going to have to resize it. Fortunately, our software has gotten very good at enlarging files, especially simple ones like this. So what I'm going to do, the first thing is my final file is going to be a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. So before I do anything here, I'm going to undo the resample, and I'm going to change the resolution from 72 to 300. And when I do that, I have to condense those pixels to have higher resolution, and the size is going to get much smaller as a result. So I now want to resize the thing, so I click resample again, and I have to think a bit about the size I'm going to need. If I have a 4x6 at 300, I'm only going to use a very small area, maybe 1-inch square is approximately where it's going to go in the corner of that. I will remind you that once you get it in use, free transform allows you to make it larger or smaller and not damage the final image. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set the width at 1 inch. And it means that the height is just a tiny bit under. I'm leaving it the way it is. And then I have to remember to come down here and set this for a best for enlargement because I'm adding pixels. I say okay. And then I'm going to stretch this out so I can see it. I knew right away that before I did anything to get rid of that background, I would like to sharpen it a little bit. You know, I started with a nothing image. Maybe you'll find a better example. This is what I had. Any method that you use is fine. I'm going to go in and use unsharp mask. And you can see I've already worked it. It popped in. The threshold means, is there much smooth area not to be damaged by sharpening? Not much at all in here. There's a little bit of smooth in the whites there. I put a threshold of 4. It means that it won't change any area that has the pixels smoothed out, and it looks at 4 pixels. If it's got 4 pixels, it doesn't sharpen it. And so you can use it or not. And then I went quite strong on the radius. I went over 2 in the pixels, and then I went all the way up to 173. And then to see the before and after, you press your mouse button down on that inset. There's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like after. And I figured that it's a minor item in the pattern, but I think that that will work better for me. If you want to see the view over here, you turn off the preview. And that shows you back. Again, you do whatever you think works. This seemed to work fine for me. Okay, I now have it a little more satisfactory. I now want to get rid of the gray background. When you want to select a complex subject like this one, and you have a simple background, it's much easier to select the background. And so I'm going to go up to the selection tools, and I'm going to find the magic wand. The magic wand looks for similar pixels and it selects them. And I have 2 settings I can use down here. I can have a contiguous, meaning it will stop the minute it runs into another color. Or if I leave that unchecked, it will jump around. Can you see there's a little openings of gray in the middle here? Well, if I don't use contiguous, the gray will be picked up anywhere it is. And I know it's going to pick up parts of the virus too, but I can easily remove from the selection anything that's in the middle. So I'm going to start with no contiguous checked, and I'm going to grab that and click somewhere on the outside, and it immediately does all around that. And I'll see if I can enlarge it for you to see it a little better. Yeah. That's perhaps a bit better. So you'll notice that it actually selected the openings in the middle of the virus here. Do you see that? That's kind of effective, and it would be very hard to do it any other way. So now I have to see to it that I deselect what's in the middle here, because it found the same gray there. But those, I believe, aren't openings. I think those are supposed to be solid. So I'm going to go and get rid of the magic wand, and I'm going to use instead the quick selection. When I remove from a selection after the wand, I can move the brush pretty big. To remove from a selection is the Alt or Option key. And now if I move this all around here in the middle, and start out with it pretty big actually, and spin all around the inside of this, where I know I want to get rid of the pixels. When I get to a place where I might be fussy at all, then I can make my brush a little bit smaller. And I have to decide, is this a hole that needs to show through, or is it something that should be kept? I think that's actually a hole. This is obviously not to be selected in here. I don't want to select the areas that are in the gray. By the lighter gray is what I mean. And you can play with this all you want. Anything that you don't select is going to be transparent, and anything behind it will show through. So it's not that serious, but I'm going to go around here and see if I can find anything that's in the main body here that I don't want transparent. Okay. And then if you find little mistakes where something should have been selected and it wasn't, I'm going to make my brush very small. I'm going to use the Shift key to add to the selection. There's a little thing out here in the gray that wasn't selected. There's one over here that isn't selected. And down here is something that wasn't selected. So if there's something that was an error, you can go ahead and I want to add it. So I think I have most of it. When you remove parts of this, you have to be careful. I'm going to get the quick selection. I want it to be very small. There's this tiny thing to add to the selection. So I don't want to add the red. So I have to be careful. The Shift key and just touch that. If I'd made a mistake and I'd lost my red area, I would have just undone the last thing I did. But I looked around here and I think I've done a pretty good job of getting the background. Now remember, this is not the selection of the molecule. So I did enough work, I don't want to lose it. So I'm going to go up to Select and choose Save Selection, and I'm going to call it Background. So I don't think it's the actual molecule or whatever we call it. So let's me go and you can keep seeing mistakes. I'm going to look here and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to remove this from the selection. I think that gray. Oh, I'm not fussy. It's silly. Okay. Now at this point I have the background selected and I want to get the molecule selected. So I go to the Select menu and it'll say Inverse. And that will change it so that now it's the actual molecule that's selected. And I find at this point it helps to go out to the Refine Edge command and see if I can't smooth out the edge of the selection. I just find it's pretty jagged. It doesn't take much. So if you have any selection tool active, you'll find in Elements that in the option bar you have a Refine Edge command. Photoshop CC, you simply go up to your Select menu and find Select and Mask, and you'll get the same thing when you click on that as we get here. And in the Refine Edge command, you have choices of how you want to view it. The part that I'm viewing is the white part, and I've set it to have black on white, feeling that shows the edge. All I'm interested in is I want this edge at the outside to be smoother. So I go to the Adjust Edge Smooth, and I move it just a little bit. Maybe 4 pixels is enough. Very few pixels. Just enough so that edge is smoother. And in this case, that's all I'm going to do with this one, except when you go to the output screen, it's important to set it to New Layer with Layer Mask. When you're going to move an object into a new image, you want to have a mask determining which part of it you have refined and which part is going to go. And so I simply have that choice, New Layer with Layer Mask, and I click OK. Now I have it ready to be put into the original document. So it's important that I create the original document. So if you'll go to File, New, Blank File, and our final file I've decided is going to be a 4x6 in a portrait way vertically. And so I have my resolution correct. I want to move this to inches. And I want the width to be 4 inches. Whoops. And I want the height to be 6 inches. That'll give me and I want the background to be transparent for this project. When I do that, I click OK. I'm going to enlarge this to make it fit the screen, Command or Control 0. And now this is what's going to be my final document. And so what I'm going to do is duplicate this transparent background. Command or Control J. And on this layer, I want to create a white border. So I have to start with filling it with white. So the top of the two layers, I go to Edit, Fill or Fill Layer, choose White, and then I want to cut out of this an opening for the image to show through the window of the template. And so I have found for what I'm doing that I want my border to be larger top and bottom and not as big at the left. But to do this, it's important that you see your rulers. If you go to View, if you don't have a check mark in front of rulers, select the rulers, because it's a lot easier to position something in a rectangle if you know the measurements. It also will make it easier if I expand this so I see the edges, so I clearly know where the dimensions begin and end. So I'm going to make a box to cut out by using the rectangular marquee tool. And I've decided to come down from the top 3/4 of an inch and in from the side a 1/2 inch. So if you look, you can see my ruler is 1/2 inch on the top, meaning I've come in a 1/2 inch. And it's 3/4 of an inch down, so it means I'm that 3/4 that way. If I hold the mouse button and drag, when I get to the end, I'm going to check the right to be sure I have a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to check the bottom to be sure I have the 1/4 inch. Now, I'm going to lift my thing, and if it isn't perfect, and I don't think it is, I'm going to use my up arrow key and just move it up a little till I feel like it's even. Sometimes it's hard to be exact in drawing that. I can move that box anyway so that I know it's centered. It's basically the right size because I left the larger margin top and bottom. So how do I open that part up? I go to the Edit menu and I choose Cut. And now I have a transparent hole in that. So the next thing that I want to do is to bring in to here my COVID-19 icon. And so I'm going to leave this where I can get to it. I'm going to come over to COVID-19, and I have to be sure the layer and its mask are active. I want to move that into my thing. I can move it around and resize it after it's in. So if I get the Move tool, and I grab it, and I just drag it in and drop it, I can then move it wherever I want. You may remember I had chosen to put it in the bottom right corner because on this particular image there's more space there. And once it gets there, it looks too small. And so I'm going to use Free Transform to enlarge it. And I do that from the keyboard, Command or Control T for transform. I get a box. In Elements, this is already preset to be constrained proportions. I'm not sure whether the latest version of Photoshop sets it. If it's not constrained, then you have to hold the Shift key. If it is constrained, you simply grab a diagonal corner and make it what you think is the right size. And you don't have to worry because you can resize it later if you didn't do it correct. So I just accept it with the check mark. And then I'm ready to do two more things. Insert the picture and put a title on the border. I'm going to insert the picture next. I don't need any longer the COVID-19 JPEG. And if you're thinking you might have to come back to it, it's a good idea to save it before you close it, because we've done a lot of work on it. And I'm just going to put down in here something like cutout. I think I did that before, so my cutout has to be 2, and save it. Oh, there is a 2 already. It's all right, it can replace it. And that means if I have to open this later, I'll have all my work. So now I can get rid of it. It's just confusing my screen. I'm going to open the picture. File, Open. I'm going to get Sherry and Mary Lou JPEG. Open it. And it's possible that it might have to be resized to fit that box. But I have the possibility of resizing it after I move it in. and I don't really know for sure how big it's going to be. So I'm going to drag it in, and then if I need to resize it, I will. So I get the Move tool, and I'm going to center it in this next document. So if I hold the Shift key down when I drag it, the minute my mouse is over the new template, I let go of my mouse, and then I lift my Shift key, and it's in there, and I have a chance to see. Now I see the transparent picking out at the top and bottom. Can you see that little bit? Means it is not quite big enough. So I'm on the layer of the picture. I'll do a Command or Control T, and I must make this just a little bit larger. So I'm going to make it just enough larger that I can move it around. It's going to center it with the arrow keys, and I'm going to move it down till the bottom transparent area is done. So it should be hiding the box totally. That means if I now put it under the border, it'll peek out. And so all I have to do is take a look over here, and you'll see it's right on top of the layer patch. I've got to drag it down till it's under the border. So if I never accepted my transform. It won't let you go ahead till you finish one job. Drag it down under the border, and now it's peeking out. And I have the freedom to move it. If I have room left to right. If I go too much up and down, I'm going to have the transparent pick out. But basically, it's got Sherry in the picture totally. And so I think it's going to work all right. And now if you look, you'll notice the order of our layers. The bottom is the transparent bottom. Then I have the picture. Then I have the border, because the picture has to peek through the opening. Then I have the logo, because I want it to ride on top of the border. And to show you, you can still work on it, click on the border, the logo layer. And then if you have your Move tool, you can move it around if you think it should be in a different spot. If you want to make it larger or smaller, you do a free transform and change it again, completely able to be edited. And the only thing left is for me to give a name to it. And I had decided that I would call it COVID-19 Fashion. And to do that, I'm going to use a text tool, the T. And what's wonderful, again, you may remember when you add text to an image, it's in its own layer. So I'm going to come over and click somewhere up above here. It isn't permanent, so I just click it. I look at the size of the bouncing line. If I think that it looks about right, I can type my words in. But these words can be edited. I can change them after I type them. They're starting out to be black, and I've got all my fonts set. So I'm going to type on here COVID-19 Fashion. And I will accept that. And now my Move tool is what I have. So if I want to move it a little bit down, I can move it till I like it. If I think it's got to be bigger, I take the text tool, click in the text somewhere to select it. Then I go and select the whole thing. I come down to my size chart, and if I want to go up only a little bit, I can type right in there and maybe go from 20 to 22. That looks like that's big enough. 24, it seemed to be too big when I tried it. So I've got a title, and it's on its own layer. So I want you to see that if I later on have another picture that I want to put this template with, all I would do is, first of all, I have to save it as a PSD file, as you have guessed by now. I want to keep all of the layers. Let's do that. File, save as, okay, and I'm going to call this, as I called my other one, I believe, COVID-19 Fashion. And I've been doing it several times, so I have to give it a letter to change it so it saves. But you won't have to. And then it's going to go right back into today's remote class. Save it. And now, when I open it later, I have all my layers. I could change the picture by simply deleting the layer with the photo and moving in a new picture. If I want the new title for the new picture, I can click on the text layer and select it and change it. If I want my COVID thing to be bigger or smaller because it doesn't fit the picture correctly, or if my new picture has more room at the top, I will grab that layer and the move tool, and I can move that logo anywhere in the page. So it doesn't, this one, it fit nicely at the bottom, but there might be a picture where it looks better somewhere else. It's completely movable. So you have the ability to completely individualize each photo. So you need to think of it. You may not be interested in my COVID-19 fashion idea, but maybe you've got a birthday you'd like to, a celebration where you take pictures of people at the celebration. And then you can either send them via attachment to an email a picture that you've put into a template. And of course, at that point, then you will have merged it and saved it as a JPEG and give it to them. And they can print it themselves, or they can keep it as a digital file. Or if you're wanting to print it, you can do that too. But it keeps it, your master copy is a PSD file in layers, so you can continue to work with it. So I hope that gives you some ideas and that it might be useful. Stay safe and stay inspired.